Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Baylor Scott & White Sports Performance Center, athletes made here. The Sports Performance Center was developed with one goal in mind: to maximize human performance through movement and recovery. Their team of expert performance sports coaches and trainers will guide you to achieve your performance goals. That's the Baylor Scott & White Sports Performance Center, located at the Star in Frisco. This episode is also brought to you by Allen Dental Studio. Located off Bethany Drive in Allen, their office was designed with you, the patient, in mind, which means an excellent and enjoyable experience. From cosmetics to implants, you deserve a perfect smile, and Allen Dental Studio can make that happen. Also, don't want to leave out another longtime friend of the podcast, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. With locations in Carrollton and Dallas, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes offers an affordable, high-quality alternative to senior living. Call now at 469-400-7650. That's Texan, spelled T-E-X-S-E-N, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by Devin, Hasson, and Kendrick Johnson. Gentlemen, week 11 of high school football season is here. The last week of the regular season means our last game of the week podcast for the regular season and whatnot. And man, we had probably our most contentious poll of the season thus far, because you had 3 of the 5 games that had massive turnouts from those respective student bodies. So big thanks to everybody who went to the website, starlocalmedia.com, and voted on this week's poll. Ultimately, though, it was a matchup that we talked a bit about it on Monday's podcast. We've been hinting that this was going to be a big game all season long, and sure enough, it was voted game of the week.
All summer long.
Mesquite Poteet and McKinney North, the District 7-5A Division I championship game. It'll take place Friday, 7 o'clock at Mesquite Memorial Stadium. Kendrick, you've been seeing McKinney North all year. Devin, you've been covering Poteet all year. So I'm probably not going to have a ton to say on this one, and I'm just going to kind of sit back and ring the bell and let you guys, trade blows. But nevertheless, though, to run down kind of the ramifications of what is at stake in this game. So you have, McKinney North is in first place in District 7-5A Division I. They're 5-0 in district play, 8-1 overall on the season. They have a one-game lead on Poteet, who's 4-1 in district, and then 5-4. They had a bit of a shaky start, and they're in second place in District 7-5A Division I. Now, by virtue of having that one-game lead already, North has already locked up a share of the district championship, so they can call themselves either outright or co-district champions. They do have a district championship next to their season when all is said and done. But nevertheless, this game Friday is going to decide who gets that number 1 seed for the playoffs, because obviously if Poteet wins and they tie in the district standings, the head-to-head would go to the Pirates by virtue of that victory, and they would be co-district champs. Now, we had kind of an off-the-air discussion on Monday as to, if you're McKinney North and you already have you're already guaranteed a share, but if you lose this game, then I guess what is the sentiment around the program? Because, even though they might not have the head-to-head victory, it is still technically a district championship, even though you did lose to the other team that does have the other half. But nevertheless, though, so the big thing, though, is who can get that number 1 seed, though, for the playoffs, because if you look at the brackets, if you're that 2 seed, then should you advance out of the first round, there stands a chance that you could be looking opposite Highland Park in the second round. And you know what? I'll be brave enough to say it. That's not desirable. That's so yes, obviously, just for the sake of being able to, I guess.
And from a momentum standpoint.
Absolutely.
I mean, both these teams not only are in, but they're going to be hosting the first round, which is hugely important.
Yes.
But you never want to, as great a season as McKinney North has had, and Poteet has gotten hot here the last month and a half or so, you don't want to stumble. Even if it's against a very good team, you don't want to stumble and lose some of that momentum you built up heading into the playoffs.
So all right, so yeah, we can just kind of go. We'll start with McKinney North, because obviously with McKinney North we've talked a ton about them in the podcast, be it just the prolific offense, which is still the best thing going right now in the Metroplex at the Class 5A level. So yeah, Kendrick, just talk a bit about kind of the role that the Bulldogs are on right now, and just kind of how you're feeling heading into this game on Friday.
I feel it. Johnson Dahmer's told y'all. I'll start off with it's a huge, like you were saying about the Cole and outright. It's a huge deal. These guys are hungry for an outright district title. North's been open for going on 20 years has not happened.
Okay, so yeah, that's
it's
obviously a huge milestone.
A team goal. They want to end. If they win, that'll be 9 regular season wins. No McKinney North team other than like Ronald Jones's team has won 8. Nobody's won 9 in the regular season. So they have a lot of like team goals of distinguished themselves within the program of winning this game Friday night. And then last year, I think they just had a bad taste in their mouth because the quarterback at the time, starting quarterback Cam Constantine got hurt. And then Markowitz was his first official start as, hey, you're our guy. We're not going to switch in and out. And I looked at the stats earlier. I think he had 137 yards passing. He does that in 1 quarter now.
Yeah.
And then Manny Fincher, who's leading the area in rushing that kind of gets overlooked with the passing game, had 278 yards and 3 touchdowns. So if they can get Fincher going with the Markowitz in the passing game, I feel very confident that North is going to win this game because I don't see how they can lose this game if they score 40 points or more.
With Devin, kind of talk about just the stakes and just kind of the vibe around Mesquite Poteet, who once again is right in the thick of the district title picture heading into this home stretch. Last year it was between them and John Tyler and whatnot. And now obviously them and McKinney North. So to kind of get over that hump, just kind of talk a bit about kind of the vibe around the Pirates right now.
Well, you mentioned the slow start, and they weren't healthy, and they took their lumps. I mean, they're playing teams like Denton Ryan.
Yeah.
Had a real head scratcher against Waxahachie that they lost in the shootout. But and we've talked about the McKinney North, and I've acknowledged that machine is tough to slow down.
You've only seen it in person, so you're well aware of what it can do.
But the Poteet defense, I think it feels confident coming in. They know they're not going to pitch a shutout. But in their last 6 games since that slow start, they're allowing 16.7 points per game. They had the hiccup against West Mesquite where they lost 31-17, but that was more self-inflicted. I mean, they only gave up 257 yards, but they turned the ball over 3 times. They hurt themselves. They had 15 penalties. Just the defense was put in a situation, you weren't put in a position to succeed. Last week against John Tyler, a really impressive 37-14 victory. Catan Crawford, John Tyler's outstanding running back, they held him to under 100 yards. And I think, they have guys in the secondary, Jalen Hodo, who was last year's district defensive player of the year, Jamad Jackson, Jeremiah Akuman, who actually had the big pick 6. I mean, John Tyler still had a chance to make a late comeback last week, and he picks off a pass, takes it back 89 yards, kind of for the game-sealing interception touchdown return, similar to how the McKinney North Poteet game ended last year with Cam Lapkin taking it back. But I really think the most important focus is on those linebackers. Poteet has good, athletic, active linebackers. Stephen Kirk and Jalen Updike, Nicholas DeVille and Bryce Hamilton and Brenton Hamilton up there on the line. Because I think the biggest key for them is to try to slow down and limit what they can Manny Fincher. Because he's so impressive every time I've seen him play. And I mean, they're going to get there through the air just because of the style of offense they play. But if they're not going to take him out of it, but if they allow him to pick up 8-9 yards a carry like he's basically been averaging this year, and they can hurt you both ways, I just don't see how they can slow down both. I think they're going to focus on the run, try to limit Fincher as much as possible, and maybe try to make, McKinney North force a couple mistakes through the air, or they do have those playmakers on the outside.
Well, I can say when it comes to mistakes, that interception, in a weird way, set the tone for this year's team because they missed out having a home game because John Tyler had clinched last year, so they were playing for that second spot and who get a home game, and that was Markowitz threw 2 picks in the last quarter, and then he went the whole first 7 games without throwing a pick, so he used that as motivation. So he's kind of looking forward to, unlike Sam Darnold, he doesn't see ghosts against Poteet, so he's definitely looking forward for this stage. But besides I talked about Fincher and Markowitz, but Markowitz has weapons. You got Brandon Frazier, 4-star tight end for going to Arkansas. J.J. Jones is second in receiving yards, has 1,075 and 12 touchdowns. And then the undercover guy, the linchpin in all this is Sean Mansour. The dude just flats out catch everything. And he's a baseball player. He's the district MVP for baseball because he doesn't make any errors.
He had a huge game against West Mesquite was so busy with their other skilled guys last week. I mean, he was wide open every single time they threw it to him. And I think he had 8 catches for 125 and a touchdown.
And then Noah Ford, because Ford, JJ, Frazier and I missed somebody, Mansour, all have over 500 yards receiving.
Yeah, it's like what a luxury though when your number 4 wide receiver or whatever is capable of just he can be your lead guy on some night. It's such a luxury. No other. I'm not sure there is another offense in the state that has that kind of depth at the skill positions. So yeah, I mean just to kind of keep y'all abreast of kind of where the McKinney North offense is at as far as their ranks or whatnot. I mean we need to go back and find out like the last time that like at least historically kind of where this offense stacks
7
up.
years in a row they've had 40 points or more for a season, which to me is crazy. And this is the most prolific. This is the most passing yards. It's second most rushing yards. This is the most total, and this is the most points.
I just mean like in the area in general, like across all those Metroplex teams in 5A, because it's you look at the numbers. I mean, it is a special group. I mean, they're averaging on average. Again, this is like not above, not below. This is the median performance for them. It is a 581.8 yards per game. That's number 1 in the area among 5A schools. Passing yardage, 335.9. That's obviously also number 1. And Markowitz, the leading passer in the area. Rushing yards, Manny Fincher. That's the number 10 rushing offense at 245.9, and they have the number 4 scoring offense at 54.3. We've talked about the power players for the McKinney North offense. With Poteet, obviously the biggest name when you think of Poteet is Oklahoma commit running back Seth McGowan, who is he's got 840 rushing yards this season, albeit with how many games has he missed? 4.
Yeah, he's basically 3 and a half.
Yeah, so you still wonder what that. I mean.
That's why what do you think about Jaden Smith, a sophomore? He impresses me. They have a sophomore that's a change of pace guy for North. He's got 529 yards and 4 tubs. He's a guy that can come on you when you least expect it. I don't know if you've seen him.
Yeah, he didn't get a lot of touches.
Different style runner from Fincher too.
But yeah, you mentioned Seth McGowan's missed the season opener. He missed the last 2 weeks.
And that's kind of the big subplot heading into this game because
that's the big mystery kind of coming in because he's certainly a difference maker. I mean, he's only had 82 carries this season, but he's averaging better than 10 yards a carry. Last year in this game, he goes 30 carries for 242 and 3 touchdowns. If he's not available, that's going to be really tough to replace. But they found something last week.
I know, and I'm fascinated to hear more about this kid.
Davion Jeans, Seth McGowan is your prototypical college prospect, 6 foot. 220, solid muscle, breakaway speed. You look at Davion Jeans, he's listed at 5'4", and I mean, just he's fearless the way he runs. He he gets the ball and he hits that hole. And last week against a good John Tyler defense, he's able to go 30 carries for 223. And the ceiling touchdown there in the last minute. But, again, you look at him and that's the starting running back. He doesn't have that prototypical look, but the guy has been successful. I mean, he's carried the ball 124 times this season because McGowan's missed so much time for 727 yards and 5 touchdowns. So he's averaging basically 6 yards a carry. So it wasn't a one-game fluke last week where John Tyler wasn't ready for this kid and he was able to catch him by surprise. He's been able to produce all season long, and especially if McGowan's unable to go, Poteet's got to feel good that they're not just bankrupt in the backfield in terms of not having anybody to carry the ball, because Davion Jeans has proven that he can do it.
Because say what you will about what John Tyler's had on offense this season, but that's been a pretty solid rushing defense. They don't just allow 200 yards to anybody. So for him to have that kind of performance, it's got to be a massive confidence boost for them.
Yeah, and so I fully expect McKinney North. To focus on taking him out of it, whether it be him or McGowan. I mean, obviously they're different challenges, and they're going to have to prepare for both. That's the other thing. There's 2 different styles of runner, 2 different backs, and they're going to have to be ready for either one of them, because if McGowan is there, then they're going to use both, which they have all season long. But expect them to stack the box and make Jalon Police beat them through the air. He's completed less than 50% of his passes this season. He's made some big plays. He's thrown for over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. Only 4 interceptions in 166 attempts, which is good. Even if he's not hitting on a lot of these plays on the outside, he's not making critical mistakes either. They have an excellent go-to receiver in Tristan Golightly, who's 39 grabs for 603 yards, 9 touchdowns. A little bit of drop-off. Jalen Graham is a playmaker, 19 catches for 317 yards and 5 scores. They've also used him in the backfield a couple times when I saw him a couple weeks ago. So he's a guy that can do a little bit of everything, but that's, I think, regardless, Poteet wants to establish the run keep that McKinney North offense off the field and be able to move the ball there. So I fully expect McKinney North to, we're gonna stack the box and we're gonna make it beat you through the air. Poteet has some guys out there that can make big plays, but I think that's where the key on that side of the ball is going to come down to against the McKinney North defense that has been known to give up a few points. So
it's been the story all year long on McKinney North. Like I think I called them it was like a Big 12 team on bath salts with just the ceiling of their offense, but at the same time their defense was giving up so much, especially early in the season. And I wanted to kind of just broach that again because I did some little research as I'll be wanting to do.
They've been brothers. Pops the coach Villarreal out. They've given up 35 points or less since they got the district.
And I was curious though because I did kind of look through that. So the first 4 games of the season for North, Kendrick, it was a horror show. I mean, they averaged 51 points allowed, 603.8 yards allowed.
60 twice.
I mean, they gave up. There were multiple. There were back-to-back 700+ yardage games allowed.
It was like they're playing their own offense.
Yeah, exactly. But then you look at their last 5 games, and over the last 5 games, they're allowing only 27.6 points per game and 342 yards per game. But the question is though, so you can interpret that one of 2 ways. Either you're showing tangible signs of growth on defense, or perhaps maybe the schedule has kind of broken away that they're not really facing the caliber of offense that they saw earlier in the season. Because you look at those 5 opponents: Sherman, Texas High, Wiley East, West Mesquite, and John Tyler, and you look at their points per game just over the course of this season, none of them are averaging over 30 a game. Whereas those first 4 teams that they played, McKinney, Northwest, Wakeland, and Heath, they're all averaging at least 34. So those are certainly the best offenses they've seen. So I don't know. I mean, how do you interpret that, Kendrick? Are you still seeing tangible signs of growth, or is just the schedule kind of broken away to where they're not really seeing the caliber of offense that they saw earlier in the year?
You know me, I like to be definitive. Well, I actually think it's both because they play teams, but they've gotten better. I've been in practice. Coach Fetchy's been hands-on. Coach Villarreal, they got back to the basics and worked on tackling, and that's been a key. As basics they've seen, they're a better tackling team. But Keith, what's the kid from John Tyler? I keep forgetting his name.
Tom Crawford.
Yeah. Tom Crawford had 280 yards and 3 touchdowns in the first half. I'm like, this man's on Gaddick base. And they held him to 26 to on 9 carries, 26 yards the second half. That's more indicative. They make adjustments, and that's really the key versus they were making adjustments and people missing tackles and all that stuff. Yeah. I think that was more indicative on how they've matured where they can switch things up. Like against the last game they lost to Wakeland, I was there. Wakeland had over 7 yards total offense. It had not 1, not 2, but 4 plays for touchdowns, over 50 yards.
Because if you're Poteet, I don't think their success is so much going to be defined by the number of yards that they gain or the number of points. And there's unfortunately, for the stats that we have available to us, there's no way to tell what their ultimately the advantage or disadvantage in this area is going to be. But I think the most important stat for them is time of possession. Yep. And if they're able to, that's going to kind of in a sense be their best defense. You can say what you will about the individual matchups in the North offense versus the Poteet defense, but if they are able to really kind of just run that clock down and just shackle North's offense to the sidelines. I don't know to what extent teams have had success doing that this year, because again, they've scored at least 35 points in every single game. I think of the game against John Tyler.
It was a rainstorm.
So because that was their lowest scoring performance. So if it was more weather impacted versus anything that John Tyler was doing that maybe made them a little uncomfortable.
Because Markowitz, they made a play they picked him. Markowitz almost did a DAC that game. He had done an interception, and he throws one on the second play of the game, and then he was late on a pass, but I think it was more weather related, and then they played that torrential downpour, so I think they have more to say about it than anything that they didn't. As long as they didn't score 40.
So as far as just kind of getting to keys to victory, we can go. I think it's kind of a rhetorical question. I know where you guys are leaning on this matchup, but nevertheless, so Kendrick, on Monday's podcast when we were talking about this, you were about to outline your 3 keys to victory for McKinney North, and I had to cut you off just because we needed to save some material for this episode just in case they got named Game of the Week. So I hope you haven't forgotten those keys to victory. So, but nevertheless, though, I'm assuming that you're going North in this one. So I'm going to give you a chance to refresh our memories and just what were those 3 keys to victory that you see the Bulldogs needing to fall through on to get the win.
Turnovers. If they don't turn the ball over, I don't see how there's any way that they lose this game. Like I said, last year, Markowitz threw the 2 picks. It was kind of his first game in the saddle. He's only thrown 3 this whole year, and 2 of them came against John Tyler. I don't think he's going to have back-to-back 2-pick games. So that's number 1. That's the key. Getting stops on third down. part of the reason North has improved on defense is they're getting people off the field more versus they sit there and stay on the field, couldn't get third downs, and then get hit with a big play, and then your momentum's down. They got to get stops on third downs. Like Devin saw that in one game, the West Mesquite game. They didn't get stops on third down the third quarter. The fourth quarter, they get stops on third down, and then the game changes because with their offense being Texas Tech-ish, they get too stoppish, and then that's key. And then number three is an intangible thing, not being too amped up. They've had this game circled on the calendar since last summer because they felt they should have won and they didn't. And then now with having all these goals that they have for 9 games in the program, first outright district title, sometimes a game like that, you can come out too amped up and it take you to the second half to adjust and you're down by 2 touchdowns and you're having a bad half or something like that. So and you're not playing in the friendly confines that's MIC Stadium, so they're playing on the road. So that's a big thing too. So I know hopefully the Bulldogs don't come too amped up. But at the end of the day, my score is Bulldogs 48, Poteet 30.
I thought you were going to say 3. I was going to say, whoa, all right.
70-2.
Yeah.
That'd be Brian Murphy.
Yeah, Devin, so I don't know if you have a score in mind, but nevertheless, just kind of what do you foresee being, I guess, Poteet's surest path to victory, and I guess kind of ultimately where do you fall on this one when all's said and done?
Yeah, just to kind of, rehash what I said earlier, it's just they have to establish the ground game. You can't boil it down to one simple thing, but I think it just begins with that, and that could change everything about the complexion of the game. Because again, if they are able to keep that McKinney North offense off the field, they're able to limit their chances to score, obviously. Also, offenses like McKinney North, they don't like sitting on that sidelines. They get antsy. They want to get back out there. If they have to sit for 5-6 minutes, sometimes you're a bit more prone to say, get out there and maybe make a mistake because we haven't been out here. Let's go ahead and show what we can do. I'm tired of,
make it for lost time.
You kind of lose some of that rhythm. Now, again, obviously that's easier said than done, but I just think that's what it boils down to because I think if Poteet can do that and dictate the tempo of the game, they can win a 31-27 type game. I'm with Kendrick. If McKinney North gets over 40, McKinney North's going to win the game because I don't think Poteet has the all-around firepower to get involved in a shootout. They just not this year. They have in years past, just not, or at least they haven't shown it up to this point. But I think if they're able to control the clock, limit McKinney North's chances, and keep it in the low 30s, 20s. Type game, a type of game that McKinney North hasn't been involved in all season long. But if Poteet can do it, similar to what they've done the last 6 games, then I think Poteet has an excellent chance to win this game because Poteet's one of those programs here in the last decade that in close games, a lot of times they find a way to win. And obviously this is a new group of kids, a new coaching staff over there, but that's just kind of their reputation is they're able to find ways to win some of these games sometimes, and that's why I picked them on Friday night. The only person that picked them on Friday night.
So I guess to kind of tip my hand, I mean, because the more I thought about this matchup, there is a very clear, defined path to victory for Poteet, as prolific as McKinney North is, but I think they need Seth McGowan in order to make it happen, and just all that he brings to the table, and I mean, we talked about earlier, just the 10 plus yards per carry. He's of the top 25 rushers in the area among 5A. He's one of only 6 that's averaging double-digit yards per carry. He's a special talent, and McKinney North had their hands full with him last year. So with his status kind of in doubt right now, again, unless say I'm an evidence guy, I need the proof to be there if I'm going to commit to something. And unless we get a text from Coach McLean in the next few minutes saying that Seth McGowan's a go for Friday, I've just got to I just don't know if they have enough to keep up. So I ended up siding with McKinney North, and I mean, despite North being on the road, this was a heavy sentiment towards the Bulldogs in this one, with a 4-1 nod on the picket line, as you said, Devin. You're the lone dissent. So hey, you know what? Worked out for you last week. So we'll see. Yeah, we were all on the John Tyler bandwagon after that clunker that Poteet had against West Mesquite, and made us look silly. So we'll see. But yes, that is our game of the week, as voted on by y'all. Mesquite Poteet hosting McKinney North Friday 7:00 at Mesquite Memorial Stadium. Should be a fun one. Let's see, we obviously got 4 other games that were up for consideration for game of the week, and we can do a little cursory breakdown of those games and some picks on the other side of this break after a word from this sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast. And we are back. We've talked plenty on McKinney North and Mesquite Poteet as our game of the week, so let's touch on some of the other marquee matchups in our coverage area for Week 11. Certainly no lack of games with district title implications, with playoff implications and all that good stuff. So let's start over in, let's get another de facto district championship game out of the way. Over in District 7-5A Division 2, you have at Frisco ISD Memorial Stadium Friday 7 o'clock, Lovejoy at Frisco. Two teams that have been part of that. They've been in the thick of that logjam at 7-5A D2 all season. The winner of this game gets at least a share of the district championship. You know, they're both tied with Denton Braswell for first place in that district. And yeah, we'll see. So if Frisco is able to win, then they would be crowned the outright district champions because they already have a win over Braswell. Meanwhile, Lovejoy lost to Braswell, so by winning they'll at least guarantee themselves a share. If Braswell were to lose to Denison, then Lovejoy gets it outright. So yeah, obviously seeding implications and all that good stuff on the line. As far as kind of where we're leaning on this game, this is a tough one. All these games in the top tier of this district are really tough.
I missed every game that we picked on this district all year long. So good news for you, Lovejoy fans, because
there's not a lot of separation between these teams. You look at a team like teams like Frisco and Lovejoy and how close the games against Reedy were, or that Lovejoy's been in multiple overtime games this season. I mean, it's a really, really talented and competitive district at the top. Ultimately, though, what kind of boil down to this one is I just think Frisco has a few more ways to win. We've really only seen Frisco struggle in one particular kind of segment. It was that 10-7 game against Denison, that weird wonky game where Denison was really able to. I mean, Denison's a run-based offense, and they did a really good job of kind of like we alluded to earlier of really just kind of keeping Frisco's offense shackled to the sidelines. Frisco, as we've talked about the added passing game that they have this season. To complement that great wing tee of theirs. Whereas with Lovejoy, I don't know if they're capable of kind of replicating that sort of strategy or so. And granted, that doesn't mean that's the only way you can beat Frisco, but I just think that Lovejoy, they somehow survived last week against Denison despite only rushing for 6 yards overall, which seems impossible.
That's today's football.
Yeah. I don't like. Again, they're whether it's the pass, whether it's the run, they've had a few too many, and even in victory, some inconsistencies in their play. And I don't know. I just kind of like the overall. I think Frisco just has more ways to beat you. And I kind of the team that has more routes conceivably, I'm going to side with that. So I ended up going with Frisco in this one. I don't know. You guys picked Frisco as well. I mean, was there anything different from what I said as far as what led you all to picking the Raccoons in the end, or
outside of spike for Lovejoy for costing me last week?
There you go. That too.
That's one thing that I did. When listening to Brian talk about Frisco, it's just we just marveled at how running the wing tee in this day and age, and the fact that they still use it effectively, and that teams know it's coming, but you can't prepare for it in just 1 week and try to duplicate what they do, and just how successful they've been. But the fact that you mentioned that they've added a passing element, which is so tough to do when in that kind of offense, but it's so effective when you are able to incorporate that. I just think that's why again the Denison game threw me off for 3 weeks because I didn't know what to make of them. But I just think that gives them a little bit more of an edge.
And the fact I saw them in, I don't want to call it a real game, but the scrimmage before the season against North, they can fly. They got guys they got 2 or 3 dudes that can scoot, and the quarterback's very athletic. So that's why I'm leaning on from actually seeing them going somewhat full speed.
Because as bizarre as that loss to Denison might have looked on paper, it's like we focus on the 7, but it's also like they only did allow 10 points to what's been a pretty prolific offense in Denison. So Frisco can definitely play some defense as well. I think a little bit better than Lovejoy. So yeah, I'm siding with Frisco. It was a 4-1 nod in favor of the Raccoons in this one. Taylor Ragland being the dissenting vote. He is going with Lovejoy. The rest of the staff picking Frisco to get that district championship. Then you've got the Axe game, the annual Battle of the Axe over at Max Goldsmith Stadium in Louisville. The Farmers welcome Marcus. kind of like you with Lovejoy last week, man. Lewisville let a lot of us down.
Yeah, I was about to say, speaking of teams that burned me last week, and I'm picking against this week.
I was so red. I really had talked myself into, as much as I had been pumping up Hebron all season, I really did feel like Lewisville was playing the better, more consistent brand of football on both sides for that matter. And wouldn't you know, they go out and they just get their heads kicked in by the Hawks.
I'm at my side. I didn't pay attention that they were playing at the Woodshed. It seemed like Hebron's a different team at the Woodshed. They take teams to the Woodshed.
But it wasn't just the fact that they got beat. I could have totally seen them lose a 34-31 game.
Yeah,
it was the fact that that game was over in the first half.
I know.
It looked,
very, very disappointing. Because let's not again take away from the job that Lewisville had done up until that point, because they have had a really strong season. You know, their only other loss in district has come in that nail biter against Flower Mound, where they were again like 12 seconds away from winning that thing. So Lewisville's still a solid team. Marcus though has they've already locked up the high seed in the 6A Division 2 bracket, I believe. They're going for their first ever, I don't know if it's first ever, but their first outright district championship in quite some time. So obviously there is still that at stake, because you wonder when you do have kind of your playoff seed essentially decided how you're going to approach the game. But I think just because of the rivalry stakes in this one, the Battle of the Axe, it's one of the few rivalries where you actually play for something. It's an actual trophy to be won. And I think they're going to approach this as they would any other game. And I mean, their offense has just been ridiculous this season. That was one thing that at least I was proud to at least get to jump on. Watching them over in the offseason, you kind of got a sense that okay, this offense might be a little bit more explosive than it's been in recent years. And it's certainly lived up to it. They're the number one offense in the district, and their defense has shown pretty well as well. I think they're going to get enough to. I think they're going to wrap it up, and I think they're going to go undefeated in district play, and that'd be such a huge feather in the cap for Kevin Atkinson and that crew to, especially after missing out on the playoffs last year. Just what an incredible 1 year turnaround to win that district as competitive as it's been. Kind of like again Frisco and Lovejoy. I just think that they're just a little bit better on both sides of the ball.
That's what I thought. Just the offense, looking at their offensive numbers, I fully expect Lewisville to bounce back. I mean, that was. We're not saying anything bad about Lewisville and being in the separation between them and Hebron. It's an anomaly. Those games happen, and it just got away from them.
Hebron is really good too.
And it just got away from them. I fully expect this game to be what we expected last week. A game that goes down to the wire. I just think Marcus has a little bit too much firepower on offense.
Marcus is that team this year. As they say, it's their time.
Then you have, that one was unanimous. We're all going Marcus over Lewisville, so looking for the Marauders to polish off an undefeated run through district play. Then you got over in District 9-6A. This game, depending on what happens in Plano and Prosper, man, you wonder if they're going to be piping in updates to this one in McKinney ISD Stadium.
Oh, it will.
You can imagine. You can imagine if you get a Prosper 21, Plano 0, and then all of a sudden, like the energy in that stadium is going to become like, oh my God, because what happens? So we're talking about McKinney and McKinney Boyd, the crosstown showdown over in McKinney ISD. McKinney ISD Stadium hosts this one Friday at 7 o'clock. If Plano loses to Prosper, which if just looking at the picket line, we all see that happening. The winner of McKinney and McKinney Boyd gets in. They get that last playoff spot in District 9-6A. Felt like a pretty far-fetched scenario just a couple weeks ago, but weird things have happened in 9-6A. Plano's been bitten by the injury bug, and they have fallen back into the pack, and now it is all up for grabs. We have chaos in the making for Friday night. So Kendrick, you're going to be at this game. These are your two schools over at the 6A level. So we'll try to try to make up something then. So let's see. What is your read on this matchup? They've had this one circled all season long. McKinney and McKinney Boyd. Just what are your thoughts on it?
It won't be a shootout. Like last year, it was like 14. It was tied up at halftime, 14-14, and they turned into a shootout in the second half. I think the winner of this game, whoever scores over 21 points, will win this game. I'm leaning towards the Lions for the simple fact they have more ways to win. They have a three-headed running attack. Either one of those guys could go off for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, or they could just get 5 carries and 2 of them are over 40 yards. And then the Boyd offense has been so inconsistent. I don't have enough confidence in them that they're going to be able to generate enough points to beat the Lions. But I will say this, as you see this firsthand, Boyd's defense can score on you if you slip up.
Oh yeah, Boyd's defense is that's.
I would say they're probably tied for second for the best defense behind Allen in that district.
Oh yeah,
or maybe right up there with a Prosper or something like that.
Again, you look at this. You look at the record, and it's nothing to write home about. But that defense held Allen, and I know it was in bad weather or whatnot. But they still
under 30 points.
Yeah, they still held Allen to 24 points. Like Prosper Prosper only had, 3 or 6 points at halftime in that game?
And the two of those touchdowns were they had short side of the ball off turnovers or going for it on fourth down, so they had short fields on 2 of the touchdowns. So that defense, if the defense from Boyd can generate a touchdown like they did against Jesuit or something like that, that flips everything. But I'm leaning towards the Lions. I'm not going to give a score, but I think it's going to be close. And if I have to go to Vegas, which I do often, I'll put my money on the Lions to come through in a close affair.
When you get out there.
Yeah, kind of the same way, kind of echoing the same thoughts that you had, Kendrick. I ended up siding with the Lions in this one, kind of again, just because I feel like they're like with what Boyd did last week against Plano, that was very, very impressive, but I mean, obviously Plano was the version of the Plano offense that McKinney saw earlier in the year, and the one that Boyd saw, it's not the same because, again, you can't underestimate how bad those losses at receiver have been for Plano. But nevertheless, though, if Boyd's offense is able to sustain drives, even just here and there, it doesn't have to be every single time you're marching downfield putting together 12, 15 plays, but just if they can just keep that defense fresh, then it changes a lot in this game because I think Boyd's defense is very capable of slowing down McKinney. I mean, we talked about what they did against Allen and Prosper. McKinney doesn't have that kind of firepower, so it's...
and another thing, not to cut you off, is a big thing that the Lions are looking at. No McKinney team has won back-to-back games in this rivalry. So they ended the drought last year. So they want to put that exclamation point and start their own streak against Boyd, which would be a change of roles just like that.
So yeah, we kind of in conjunction with what we were thinking back when district play first began and we were laying out our district predictions, we all see McKinney getting in somehow, some way. It's a weird roadmap that they took to get to this point.
They got in.
They just, they never make it easy on themselves.
But the crosstown showdown, without putting the score out there, will be decided by a touchdown less. I've seen 3 of them. I've seen one come down to the last play. I take that back. The first time I saw a blowout, Boyd won 38-14. Second year, it literally went down to the last play. And then last year, McKinney got a late pick by Isaiah Rojas, who's their star receiver now, to seal the deal, and they only won by 8 points. So, Costa, when these two teams hook up, like they say, you literally throw the records out the window.
Perhaps you could say the same about our last game on the docket. Rowlett and Sachse. This one over in District 10-6A. Going to get a little bit of clarity to another just absolute mess of a district. This one, Friday, 7 o'clock at Williams Stadium. Devin, you're going to be in the house for this one. So, yeah, man, just kind of break down the stakes for this one and just kind of where you're leaning on this pivotal matchup.
Well, you mentioned actually having a tangible trophy. This one has the Hammer Bowl.
Okay, I didn't even know that. Really?
Huh? That was a trophy, though?
Rowlett's first principal when they opened was Marlene Hammerly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Her husband, Steve Hammerly, was the principal when Sachse opened. And so they created the Hammer trophy that they traded around.
That's cool.
Yeah,
my brother actually played for Rowlett, so I know my parents live out there. Shout out to the Eagles.
We need more rivalries with trophies in high school football.
And I wish I had a picture to show you. I saw it because they were passing it around on Twitter earlier this week. But this has been it's a strange district. It's a strange rivalry recently. I mean, 3 years ago, these two teams were undefeated. People were touting this as the biggest game in Garland Dynasty in 20 years. Sachse goes out there and wins 33-7. I mean, it wasn't even a game. 2 years ago, Sachse was supposed to beat them by 40 points. That Sachse team with just the maidens and just that talent that they had, it was supposed to be close. Well, Rowlett was up 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter before Sachse rallies with 21 points to win 42-35. Last year, again, supposed to be a lot closer. Biggest blowout in series history. Sachse wins 48-0. So who knows with that rivalry, and who knows with this weird district. We've talked about it all year. Rowlett, 4 games in districts decided by 2 points or less, including 3 by 1 point. Sachse, 3 games decided by 3 points or less. They're 2-1 in those games. Rowlett's 3-1 in those games. Obviously this has playoff implications. Sachse's playing for a share of the district title and to assure itself the top seed in Division 1. Maybe. I don't want to get into all those different tiebreakers, but there is a way. If Rowlett loses and Naaman Forest beats Lakeview, then Rowlett's out. The trickle-down effect on that is that Wiley then potentially shoots up to Division 1, and they would be the top seed in Division 1, thus giving Sachse a date with Allen in the first round, but that's all particulars that we'll see what happens. I think Lakeview beats Naaman Forest. Just as good of a turnaround as Naaman Forest has made under Jesse Perales and that first-year coaching staff to even put themselves in position to make the playoffs, I still think Lakeview wins that game, and so it kind of holds true to form. But as far as this game, it's just, you look at the big names from this district, Kamar Wheaton for Lakeview, Sean Coleman, and now kind of an emerging Brian Okoye for Sachse, Sabron Woods over at North Garland, Kingsley Bennett at Naaman, even Jaleel Brown at South. All these guys are runners. I mean, there's not, with the exception of Sergio Perez over at Garland, none of these guys has thrown for more than 1,200 yards.
Wow.
So when you're all basically ground-based, you got longer possessions, and this you keep the scores down. So unlike some of our districts we talk about where it's 45, 42, again, all the games in this district have been
21 to 20.
Yeah, I mean, Rowlett beat Naaman Forest 7-6. See, even Sachse and Lakeview, who arguably had the two most dynamic offenses in the district, it was 17-14, and it took a defensive play late in the game to set up that score. So I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I think Sachse has the more proven offensive players with Sean Coleman. And I mentioned Brian Okoye, the sophomore who had 80-yard touchdown run last week. The question for Rowlett is Alex Rowlett can be healthy. Their quarterback who obviously leads them through the air, but he's also the leading rusher.
Yeah.
And without him, if he's unable to go, they don't have that consistent running threat alongside him. Like I say, he leads the team in rushing. I do like what I've seen from Colton Yarborough in limited touches. He's averaging over 8 yards per carry. He's made a couple big plays, a couple long touchdown runs here in the last couple weeks. Dewanye Newton's also been able to do some things on the ground. It just they haven't been able to do it as consistently, and neither team has really been able to establish anything consistent through the air. So I think you're looking at another low-scoring game where the defense, because both defenses have been good all season long, but it also helps when you're not playing an offense that's capable of scoring 50. So I picked Sachse in this game just because I think they're a little bit more proven. I think Rowlett with their health issues is a big concern. But I think it's going to be close, and I think it's going to be low scoring. Like I say, I think it's something along the lines of 21-10 Sachse.
And there you go. And you were not alone, Devin. The picket line was unanimous in backing Sachse to continue its winning ways against Rowlett. And folks, that'll do it for this episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. As far as games that we are covering, quickly want to touch on our coverage slate. Well, I guess I've already kind of intimated it. You're going to be at McKinney Boyd on Friday. You're going to be at Rowlett Sachse. I'm going to go out to Prosper, my first trip out to that new stadium out in Prosper to watch them play Plano. Because that game still does carry significance in District 9 6A, and we'll see. I mean, I feel like it could wind up being one of the darker nights in the history of Plano ISD football, because if Plano loses, then for the first time ever, all three Plano schools will not make the playoffs or out of the playoffs. They will not have a single representative in the playoffs for Plano ISD.
Well, you mentioned the buzz too. If they announce Prosper 21, what if they announce Plano 21, Prosper 0 at halftime, and the two McKinney teams are going, oh, seriously? I mean, that could creep in, if that's something like that.
It can't be as crazy as 2 years ago when McKinney had the ball at the 2, but they were losing. But they were losing within 8 points because Boyd had to win by 8 points. McKinney basically, they had to not lose by 8 points. So even though McKinney lost the game, it's crazy because it's a goal line stand on Matt Gaddick, which I think he got in. Shout out to Miss Jennifer Gaddick. I think he gets in.
Is she watching this?
You see Boyd people going crazy, and McKinney guys like booming, and he's like, Jay Smith said, "We're going to the playoffs. We're going to the playoffs," and it was the most oddest thing because the team that lost was going to the playoffs and the team that won was going home, but their emotions were boom. So I've seen weird situations with this showdown already, so it can't be no worse than that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, though, it would be the first time in history that Plano has not had a team in the playoffs since they've had three teams in the school district, and so in a sense, maybe I might be walking into a funeral on Friday of sorts, but who knows? I guess, like you said, crazier things have happened, so we'll see what the Wildcats can muster against what's probably going to be a pretty pissed off Prosper team after getting their heads kicked in by Allen last week. So we'll see. Yeah, that one's Friday 7 o'clock out at Children's Health Stadium at Prosper ISD. I think that's how the entire thing is said. That's going to be what we have on tap for Week 11 of high school football season. Folks, hey, appreciate you for checking this out. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we will talk to you all later.